Okay, tonight we're going to recap the Russian road to revolution and the revolution itself. So we'll talk about developments that led to revolution in Russia, and here we go. Okay, so this image at the top, hopefully you were able to analyze it in class. But we have, sorry, I was interrupted. The top level is the Tsar, as you can kind of infer. The second level can be the Duma, right, which is that parliament that the Tsar selected and put into place to kind of give an appearance of giving up some of his absolute power, but it was limited. You can also have the Zemstvos, pardon my pronunciation, and they were the local government officials. Again, Russia is very large and spread out, so they needed local officials to help administer their government. Then below that, we have the Orthodox Church, then the military, then the aristocracy, the boyars, our intellectuals, and the very bottom we have the serfs, who take both factory positions working for them and agricultural positions, farming positions, feeding. Okay, so Russian industrialization. Stems from Russians' defeat in the Crimean War. They realized after fighting the Ottomans how behind they are. Again, that was one of your quiz questions. What showed in the 19th century showed the Russians how behind they were. It's sponsored or paid for by the state because Russia does not have a middle class. Remember, 95% of the Russian population is illiterate. They are serfs, and only 5% are the upper class. The industrialization includes railroads, factories, and an effort to grow the urban working class. So we have a slight urbanization. We bring the steam engine and an effort at advanced manufacturing. But it's not on par with Western Europe in technology, how advanced it is, or mechanization, so how industrialized it is. So Russia has to make up for their deficit in technology and mechanization by having lots and lots of people and labor. So that is how they reach fifth in the world in industrialization, and it's because of the number of people they have working, because they have such a large lower class. Okay, this video is posted on OpenClass. You should watch until 5:25. Or just kidding, I'm sorry, we'll watch it tomorrow. So no need to watch it tonight. Okay, so by 1900, here we have a poor serf. By 1900, again, Russia is top 5 in the world for production of steel, for oil, and textiles. And again, they're not on par, but they have so many people. It's huge, and they have population and natural resources. So their production is not efficient. They're just working the people, almost one might say, to death. Pardon me. Their agricultural production is still inefficient because our serf class, 95% of the population, are illiterate peasants. They have no ability to make advancements, to engineer, etc. So you take a look at this ox or horse plow as an example, and then think of the steam engine and the technology that Western Europe is using. So Russia is still very behind, but they are making strides to catch up. So the road to revolution, that's the setting the scene. How Russia gets to be on track for a revolution. We have nationalist pressure from groups within the empire, so you've studied those, but they're those groups that want to protect and defend Russian culture and have a sort of internal self-strengthening movement. We also have social protests brought on by limitations of reforms. So our czars are making reforms to try to make things better, But they're almost making things worse because they're showing the people that they have the ability to make reforms, but these reforms are ineffective. They're not getting the job done and helping the majority of people, and then people start to demand more and more. Pardon me. The third is the emergence of a radical movement. This radical movement wants political freedom, social reform, but they want a distinct Russian culture. You should make note, this is the intelligentsia. These are the anarchists. They're not anti-Russia. They're nationalists, but they don't want the current system. They want things to improve, but in a Russian way. Okay, so these are the radicals, the intelligentsia. They're the intellectual class, and they're pro-Russian, but they also want progress. So they're anarchists, they're anti-government. They are open to terrorism and practice terrorism to call into question the government and push for a new social order. They see no other option. Keep in mind, many of these Russians have never seen a very functioning government, right? They've never seen a democracy in action, and so they think that no government is better than the government that they're familiar with. Also, it ties into communism, which we'll get to, but this Marxist idea that government is not necessary. So terrorism only actually strengthened the desire of the czars to avoid political change. Terrorism gave the czars an excuse to crack down, right? Just like our country uses terrorism as an excuse to crack down and to spy on its people. It says we cannot have this fighting against the state. People are unsafe, and so it just ups the ability of the czar to keep control and to have more military presence, etc. Okay, so our road to revolution, the first major revolutionary action is Alexander II is assassinated by a terrorist bomb. This is not the first attempt on his life. Many have been unsuccessful. So this day, actually, there was a previous attempt of a bomb that was thrown at the Tsar and didn't kill him. So they had already a second bomber in place because of previous unsuccessful attempts. And so the second bomber is able to get the bomb right at his feet and kill him. But there was a third backup bomber just in case. They were very thorough. So Alexander II is assassinated, and as a result, the czars that come after him are even more strict. They don't want to be assassinated. So all these efforts to revolt only cause more absolute control and tyranny leaders. Okay, so the road to revolution. Marxist ideas play an integral role in revolution. At the top on the right, we have Karl Marx, and at the bottom on the right, we have Lenin, Vladimir Lenin. So Marx believed that the working class, or the proletariat, the lower class, is the proletariat, that's a term you need to know, would eventually revolt and take control of the means of production, meaning they would own all the businesses. This would destroy any instruments of power, the church, the government, the police. So Marxist ideas are actually quite anarchist. They say the government is not necessary. They're actually quite anarchist. They say the government is not necessary and that the people should all own and share the means of production. So the people own everything. And we will watch a video on this tomorrow. Okay? So Lenin is here because he is the one who implements Marxist ideologies. But Marx is actually not Russian. He is German, and he's a German writer. But the Russians get a hold of his work. Lenin studies abroad, and communism comes to Russia. Okay, so there's Vladimir Lenin. He's the leader of the Bolsheviks, and it's a workers' revolution to end the tyranny of the czars. So Vladimir Lenin represents the workers, the lower class, the regular people. Revolution this is a common communist trend. Go ahead and take notes on what this means to you. Okay, it means revolution cannot be avoided. There are mass protests in both the cities and the countryside. All over the country, people are pushing for revolution. Again, keep in mind, this has already happened in Europe, and it's less than 100 years later, so that the idea has shown that it can work, it does work, and it's kind of the cool thing to do. Then the Russo-Japanese War is sort of the straw that breaks the camel's back. So in 1904, Russia expands into Manchuria and Korea. And Korea, being the very immediate neighbor of Japan, makes Japan very nervous. In fact, they were planning on invading Korea. And so Japan goes to war with Russia. They get help and support from the British, the Japanese do. Remember, the British are the strongest navy in the world. And so little itty bitty Japan is able to overtake big, strong, in parentheses or quotation marks, Russia. This is very upsetting to the Russian people. So the Russian people say, we should have won. You're sending our people to die. You're putting all these resources and you're working us so hard so that we can be wonderful. And look what it's doing for us. It's not working. So there are huge protests in Russia. Russia does not respond well to protest. Here is a Russian interpretation of the Russo-Japanese War. You can take a look. Oh, I'm sorry, not Russian, German. So you might notice that the Germans are almost making fun of the Russians. They look like this silly bear. And Japan is this little lady. And then you see Britain with the boat on their hat supporting Japan. Okay, this leads us to Bloody Sunday. Part of the protests of Russia in Russia are put down. Okay, so Nicholas II fires on a peaceful protest that's aimed at encouraging the Tsar to make reforms. People are out in front and they're demonstrating, and the guards fire and shoot innocent people, massacre essentially. And so protests all over the country break out. We have strikes, the workers refuse to work. And so then the Tsar says, okay, and attempts reforms to lessen the tensions and make things okay. He appoints Prime Minister Stolypin. Again, this is kind of redistributing power. He creates the Duma, the legislative body, but it's often taken apart when it doesn't work out. So if it's not going the way he wants, he's like, we'll put the Duma on hold for a minute. But it's there as kind of a symbol of that the Tsar is giving up some of his power. Okay, last question to ponder, please write out. Oh no, don't, sorry, we will watch this video tomorrow and answer this video tomorrow. That is all for tonight. I look forward to watching our industrialization videos with you. Have a good night.